Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. Sometimes to generate ideas of investment, it helps me to have a look at different sectors or industries that have good future perspectives in terms of growth. And once I have identified one that I really like, I go ahead and check different companies operating within that sector that might also get benefited from the growth that the sector itself is expected to have. And today this is essentially what I will be doing, but more specifically I will be doing this for the bio and basically plant-based food sector, which is one that I certainly believe in and I think that it has great future potential. First, we will look at several statistics from the projected growth of different categories within this sector, including plant-based meat, plant-based milk, as well as fruits and vegetables in general. And after that, I will also be mentioning several stocks or companies that are operating within these categories and that might potentially be good opportunities of investment. With that said though, and after I remind you that if you want to check out any of the sources of information used in today's video, they will all be linked down below in the description in case maybe you want to have a closer look or whatsoever. But with that said, I don't want to waste any more time, so let's get right into it. Firstly, let's start with the global plant-based meat market, which is where I feel like there's more innovation happening at the moment to try to make plant-based meat resemble as much as possible to real meat. Not only that, but we are all aware as well that it is much more environmentally friendly and sustainable to eat plant-based products rather than meat, as you need a lot less resources to produce the same amount of food. But anyways, going into the first study, according to Million Insights, the global plant-based meat market size in 2019 was estimated to be $3.3 billion, and it is projected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 19.4% between 2020 and 2027, reaching a total market size of $13.8 billion in 2027. However, a similar study done by Markets and Markets is not so optimistic and projects a compound annual growth rate of 14% between 2020 and 2025. And the same goes for an article from CNBC, which expected the global meat substitute sector to grow at only 2.89% compound annual growth rate until 2024. Nevertheless, regardless of the source of information that we look at, we see that the overall trend is for this market to continue growing. Within it, it is also important to note that hotels, restaurants, and cafes had the largest revenue share of plant-based meat in 2019 with 57% of the total revenues. And this is also a good sign that plant-based meat is already entering all of these F&B establishments, and if they introduce it in their menus, it's because there is demand from the customers that enter these establishments, because essentially if there was no demand, they would not be including such products, as at the end of the day they are just running a business and they don't just put something if it's not profitable for them. Then going into more statistics, but just for the US, extracted from the Good Food Institute, we see massive growth of 45% in dollar sales in the past year, and it currently represents a 1.4% of the total retail meat market. Finally, on the plant-based meat, I think that it's interesting to know that despite many of the products right now in the market being already very advanced and resembling really like real meat, these are mostly made out of soy, peas, beans, mushrooms, mung beans, or wheat gluten, depending of course on the producer. And for instance, in the case of Beyond Meat, which I think that it's one of the most popular out there, it is made out of peas, mung beans, fava beans, and brown rice as main ingredients. And why do I say all of this? Well, I think that it's not hard to understand, but if we have that more and more people are consuming more plant-based meat products, and the companies making these plant-based meat products need as main ingredients the ones that we have mentioned, like soy, peas, and so on, this also means that probably the demand for this basic material, these raw materials of the peas, the soy, and so on, is likely to go up. And not only directly the companies making these plant-based meat products will get benefited, but also the ones providing this soy, the peas, and so on. Maybe they are not so attractive to invest in, but they should also get benefited from this. Next, and now that we previously mentioned the US, actually the total plant-based food market there is currently worth $7 billion with growth of 27% during the past year. Moreover, plant-based food sales grew 2.5 times faster than total food sales. And a subcategory within it that is also performing very well is the plant-based market for frozen meals, which increased in the past year at 28.7%. Furthermore, what is also interesting to see are the top motivations of people choosing plant-based food. The most selected option was to be healthier, followed by it tastes good, to add variety to my diet, and trying to eat less meat and more plant-based products. Surprisingly, the options on the environmentally friendly part were amongst the least selected. Next, let's move into the category of plant-based milk, which, as we will see in the statistics just in a little while, it is much more well established than the plant-based meat that we just had a look at now. And just to be clear, plant-based milk includes mostly oat milk, almond milk, as well as soy milk. These three would be the most popular ones, but it's also including other milks, such as, for instance, the coconut one. In 2019, according to Global Market Insights, the global plant milk market exceeded $12 billion and is estimated to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 11% until 2026. A more optimistic report by Proficient Market Research suggests that the compound annual growth rate will be of 14.5% until 2028. Focusing just in the US, the plant-based milk market is currently worth $2.5 billion, and it grew at 20% this past year to representing 15% of the total retail milk market. If we now compare the plant-based milk with the plant-based meat market, we see that milk is much more established with a much larger market share over the total, as plant-based meat only holds a 1.4%, meaning that alone in the US, it has a $14 billion opportunity ahead of it just to catch up with the plant-based milk market. And I mostly illustrate this to show that despite both of these categories having a very bright future ahead of them, it is clear that the plant-based meat market, it is much less developed at much earlier stages than the milk one, which also means that potentially investing in stocks that are related to plant-based meat products could also result in having much higher gains in the long run. Now moving into the last category that I want to touch on in today's video, we have the fruits and vegetables market. The reason I'm bringing this one up is because with the increased consciousness that there is in terms of health and that eating fruits and vegetables it's good for us, and it also extends our life expectancy and it prevents us from getting certain illnesses and certain problems, there's of course an increase in the consumption of these products. And in fact, according to already a relatively old study from 2016 from Markets and Markets, they estimated a compound annual growth rate for the fruits and vegetables market until 2022 of 7.2%, and for it to reach a total market value of $346 billion with that date. A more recent study by Global Market Insights predicts a compound annual growth rate of 7% until 2026, suggesting that the trend will still continue. And relating this to stocks, although it might sound very boring to talk about companies maybe producing or distributing fruits and vegetables, actually it is precisely because of that the market might offer better deals on these type of stocks, because I feel like many people are focused on high growth companies or especially a lot of tech companies. And this is precisely why maybe it's also good to have a look at these companies, that the industry itself will be benefiting them and they should also grow together with the industry. Now, before going into the list of stocks from the different sectors that we commented and that maybe it would be nice to just keep an eye on these stocks, I would first of all like to go through the graph in the screen that compares the growth percentage-wise in the last year of plant-based versus animal-based products. In it, I could go one by one, but actually in all the different categories displayed, plant-based food growth has outpaced the animal-based in milk, meat, creamer, yogurt, and cheese. And if you want to have a closer look, of course, feel free to pause the video. With it, hopefully I have been able to illustrate a bit the industry outlook, which as we have seen, it is pretty good. But now, as mentioned, I would like to run you through some stocks that are operating within these different categories. First of all, within the plant-based meat market, we have Beyond Meat, which is probably the most popular one, but it's not the only one, as we also have then the Very Good Food Company, which I think that now they are called the Very Good Food Butchers, which is also doing the same, but it's much smaller in size than Beyond Meat. And then there are other publicly traded ones, like for instance Tyson Foods, which is much larger in size, and it's not only doing plant-based meat products, but also it's operating within or having many other different products. And similarly, there are also very large companies like for instance Kellogg's, Maple Leaf Foods, Unilever, or Nestle. All of these large companies only have certain brands or divisions dedicated only to plant-based products, but they have so many resources, they are so big that I'm sure that if there's more demand really for plant-based products, they will have no problem on devoting more to that. And continuing on plant-based products, we also have Tattooed Chef, which produces only freezed plant-based products, so only the freezer section basically. And then continuing after this one, we have Large Superfoods, which is also selling plant-based food. And another interesting one is Ingredient, which is basically making sweeteners and all sorts of nutrition ingredients used in many different plant-based products. On plant-based milk, we have the company Oatly, which produces oat milk only and other related products to that, which actually just went public very recently. But this one, in my eyes, it's trading at a crazy valuation, so I have not invested in it, and for now I'm not interested in that. And finally, as for the fruit and vegetable scope, we have different companies like for instance Calavo Growers, Dole, Chiquita Brands, or Fresh Del Monte, which are producers and distributors of fruits and vegetables, as we said, that maybe it's not the most attractive sector, but certainly they will benefit from the increased demand in these products. Of course, there are many more companies within the categories that we mentioned throughout the video, but I just wanted to highlight some of the most relevant ones. And also you need to keep in mind that I try to keep them at just publicly traded companies that you could invest in if you found them interesting. Because of course there are others that are privately owned, like for instance Impossible Foods, which is also making plant-based meat products. It is probably the main competitor of Beyond Meat, but you cannot invest in it because they are privately owned. And finally, at this point, I would also like to highlight that I'm no financial advisor. In no way this video was made to recommend you to buy certain stocks, as you should always do your own due diligence before investing in this or any stock. But anyways, this was the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then please don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed, and as always, see you next time.